All right, welcome to Rapid Fire Manufacturing. Today I got my good buddy and mentor. I call him Uncle Daniel. He is Daniel Allison. He's the average dude, but really he's not average at all. He's a super connector. He is so positive and uplifting, and what he does is he really gets people together, gets them motivated. He has first sips, which if you have, from 7:55 till 8:15 in the morning, you got to watch it. It gets you pumped up. It gets you energized. It's a good way to start the day. So, Daniel, I appreciate you joining.
Hey, thanks for having me, David. You're doing incredible things with this podcast that you've started. I love the format. I love the questions that you ask. And so if I had any part in encouraging you to do what you're doing, that makes me happy. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And I think part of that too is watching your clips that you have. It got me out of my comfort zone joining some of your shows. So, and it just
Well,
proves like no matter what, if you're not comfortable, start doing that action will get you to start doing more things more often.
that's right. That's a big part of why I called myself the average dude. I was hoping that it would be relatable and make some of these things easier for folks. Because I think you probably have noticed after you started doing these interviews and started having success with it, you're like, man, I probably should have started this earlier. And so I think there's more people out there like that. And so if I can kind of make that an easy transition, then I want to do that. That's part of what we're doing with masterminds.
And that's phenomenal to do that. Now, what kind of advice would you give someone who's maybe on the fence of like, hey, should I start doing this? Should I start kind of putting myself out there? What advice would you give them?
Yeah, I would say, finding that space to just to be to do what really speaks to you, right? And I'm learning this as I go too. I certainly don't have things figured out, but where I'm at is really enjoying the content myself, right? Me and you have conversations. I enjoy that conversation. So now when I'm talking to you, hey, we've got the same. We look like we've got the same white shirt and blue sport coat on. There's synergy here, right? And so I like using media and content just to really find, like you mentioned, first sip. That's something I enjoy doing. That's something that I will continue to do. Some type of morning show, and that energy of connecting with people is just really important.
Absolutely. And as soon as Freddie starts talking, you don't even need the coffee. He gets you amped up. So you two
He
together,
does.
yeah, it's phenomenal.
Well,
Now,
it's just sorry. It's just what we're talking about, though. I would be talking to Freddie in some capacity, whether we had first sip or not. So we're just sharing what's already happening. And again, I think that a lot of times is the best content. It's just a real conversation.
yeah, absolutely. And it's a learning process too. You get to bring on people you may have never
Yes.
had the chance or opportunity to meet. And now you get to learn, take notes, and now you have more engaging conversations with other people. And it's all about learning from each other, right?
That's right. We had a lady on today, our guest today. She was a pastor, and I was excited to hear what message she would share because she's going to think differently than a male salesperson that's high
Hmm.
energy. And lo and behold, she talked about slowing down, and we all need to slow down. So to your point, having other people that are just with that same intent of sharing something that speaks to them, it just helps me to kind of start thinking in that way. And it's a new, fresh perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, to transition on the manufacturing side of things. So, how did you get started in the manufacturing world? What was your story behind that?
Well, that's an interesting thing. I had never really been a part of the manufacturing world until I started working with Waldrop Mechanical. And so I've heard some of your other episodes, and these are some manufacturing experts, folks that have been in it for a long time. So I'm not exactly the manufacturing. It can be intimidating following some of those guys from a manufacturing standpoint. But what I bring to that world is just a almost an average dude fascination with what I'm learning, right? And so since it's a new world, just from the time I'm with Waldrop Mechanical, and I'm doing more of the connecting of people more than a hands-on granular approach to the different processes and things that are involved. But I've been flying around a lot at 30,000 feet, right? And so getting to see, and I know you have done similar because you've been doing technical manuals and things. So you're covering a wide area. I get fascinated by construction projects, and if there's a squirrel that's interesting to me, then I kind of follow that energy, right? But with that being said, to answer your question, I got involved with manufacturing and started learning more about it just as a product of calling on manufacturing facilities in my prospecting efforts, right? So Waldrop
Mm-hmm.
Mechanical, oftentimes with manufacturing, there's a lot of cooling involved, both with process and heating and cooling of the facility. And so as I was learning about HVAC, because that was new to me as well, I was learning about manufacturing and the things that go on. And when you're touring a facility, I'm going to be spending most of my time on the roof looking at HVAC units, right? But you go through with the facility manager who's very familiar with the facility. And of course, he's going to explain what they're doing there, what they're making, and all of the automation and things. I mean, you know how deep that world is. And
Yes.
so I get to see all of the cool equipment and see, David, what I've learned to do as a connector is to be head on a swivel, right? My goal when I walk onto a facility is to notice everything that I can, both about the person I'm talking to and what's happening, the equipment that's being used, the sounds that I hear. But that's something that I really am intentional about. And it's amazing the things you can pick up because I probably know someone that needs to know that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I noticed a lot of things, and then I love to ask questions. And so my approach has always been, I'm not the expert. I am genuinely curious, and people find that out. So if they can feel that in whatever capacity, but again, when I agreed to join you here, I said, oh no, he's going to think I'm a manufacturing expert. And hey, I'm the average dude, David.
You've been around manufacturing, so there's some osmosis learning going on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So
No, that's
I'm
very
definitely,
cool.
yes.
Now, and I noticed this about you too. You're very good at asking questions. Is this something you've developed just over your sales career, or is it something you've seeked sort of outside of the sales? Like
Right.
Toastmasters, I know you're a part of that. Did that help with some of this?
The sales asking of the question came from prospecting and, you know, what I really kind of my approach to creating relationships is to ask questions and pay very close attention to the answers and try to learn and really that's a great skill to have in that situation, right? Because if you can find that curiosity, you're not trying to create something, but you're just following and if you don't know, you don't know. See, being
Mm-hmm.
the average dude, it really frees me up to really go into that. But yes, the asking of the questions, and I realized that podcasting, that's what I've been doing. People say, how long have you been podcasting? And I say a couple of years, but the truth is that's what I do when I podcast is what I do when I make a prospecting call, right? Or a sales call.
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting to know that person both on a professional level and depending on the situation on it, you get to know the person. And it's much more than the role that they do. For me, I'm looking who they are as a person, what's important to them. As I talk to facility managers and different folks that really have, they have such an appreciation for what they do and they try to do such a good. So I love the passion, finding that passion in people about what they do. So yeah.
Yeah, and it's clear too, because I'm sure we've all been in those situations where you feel like the questions are being asked just to check off a box. But when you start viewing it like you're genuinely curious, you ask better questions. Don't get hung up on how you frame or structure the question. And just actually think about what you're curious about, and that's how you propose them.
And it's hard to do because we are wired human nature to want that acceptance, to want to know things, and it's viewed as but there is such freedom in, hey, if I'm lost, I need directions type situation, right? I
Yes.
mean, and so in a situation like that, oftentimes they've got great information, they've got a passion. There's nothing that we're going to add. We can really learn and find out if we're genuine about what the offer is that we have from a sales perspective, then it's going to make sense, right? It's like a puzzle piece, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But what our solution, but we need to understand all the situation, and so that's what we're doing with the questions. We're finding out, and so yeah, that's the approach that I'll have, and that's why I would also say, and you and I have spoken about this, having conversations like this, the folks that you're talking to, you're creating relationships, right? And as needs
Mm-hmm.
come up, and as things progress, you have an opportunity to know that those people, because there's a difference when we have these types of conversations. So it's a very powerful relationship building tool.
Yes, absolutely. And it just reminds me of, when I initially started out with tech writing, you had that like, oh, I should know this. So you almost like are fearful of asking questions. And then it's like, you got to get over that. If you want to actually learn, you got to just get over it. It's like the guy going to Home Depot and he's looking for hours when he could just go up to someone working the store and just say, hey, I'm looking for a 4x4. Can you please help me out? So
That's
it's,
right.
we gotta put our egos down and just, I don't know. I feel like that's some of the battle, right?
It is. And the truth will set us free, right? When we're strong enough to see the reality of the situation, if we don't know, we don't know. We know where we are. And that's one of the most important things to growth. And something else that I'm thinking about is just being around people that are, the bigger boat, the people that are playing at a higher level. That this is regardless of age or where we are. If we continue to do, I have the analogy, if we're running a race and we've worked our way down to an 8-minute mile, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
somebody's running a 4-minute mile and we're on the track with them. If we keep running, we may not ever get to a 4-minute mile, but we're going to get to a 7-minute mile much
Mm-hmm.
faster if we keep running. So it really just becomes this, hey, if we're comfortable with ourselves and we're comfortable with who we are, and we're not afraid of the truth, then we are going to ask the questions, and we're going to have this freedom to be our best self, right? Which is
Yes.
as good as we can be, right? So, uh, so yeah, that's the sort of thing that I think about quite a bit.
Yeah. And in there, I could hear surrounding yourself with good people, with quality people.
Absolutely. Yeah. Find those 4-minute milers, right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, in different areas, because I've interviewed so many different folks that have so many different talent stacks, and we do compare ourselves to others, and that's okay as long as we don't want to change places with people. We are
Mm-hmm.
who we are, but we see the different skills and abilities that are with others. And then sometimes what I'll do is I'll compare them, right? With self. And what we always find out is at the end of the day, everybody is a human being with talents in different areas. And you really start to see the balance, and you really start to understand it is me versus me. That's all that
Yes.
will ever matter. And it's something that as I get older, it took me so long to really start understanding this. And and as I'm seeing it, I'm seeing the freedom, and I'm understanding the mistake I made from not seeing it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it truly, the freedom of not comparing in a way where you make yourself feel less, but it's motivation. You see what's possible, and you keep playing. You don't quit, right? And that's, as long as you keep running, you're going to get to that 7-minute mile much, much faster, because now it's been scaled in your mind. You see it smaller. You became smaller, but so did your progress.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah.
And it's truly inspiring to see what you're doing. And if anyone's watching, watch First Sips and stay tuned for more experts like Daniel Allison. Check out all his stuff on Masterminds. And yeah, let's continue to build
Hey,
each other up and connect everyone in the manufacturing, get people into the workforce.
Hey, if you're watching, continue watching Rapid Fire Manufacturing, because David Turner's doing great things. Think you're a great guy, asking great questions, and great guests too. So thank you. Let's roll.